So this is the Flow page. You can get there by going to flow.microsoft.com, which is inside of Office 365. So it's got its own URL. And if you're in Office 365, if I'm already in Office 365, I can also get to Flow by clicking on it's called our app launcher, for those of you that are not familiar. Also, Nick does the waffle. And this is the main way to navigate across applications in Office 365. And you see that there's lots and lots of applications within Office 365. SharePoint is one of those. Flow is another one. So that's just another way of getting to the site. But if you want, you can just type flow.microsoft.com in your browser and you get to the same place. So when you get to Flow, the first thing you'll have is My Flows, right, which is right here. And you can see I've created, quite a few different flows. They're all under this My Flows. What I actually haven't had a chance to do yet is create something I've created any yet under the theme flow. These would be flows that other users in my tenant could also work on with me. So I could build half of it and then turn it over and let Eric or whoever, finish it up for me. You notice how there's options here to create one from blank, or there's an option to create one from a template. So we'll just go through and do a blank one to start. And so when I do that, the first thing I have to do is select a trigger. And so it kind of remembers the triggers that I've used most recently, and it's going to prompt me for those. But you can see there's actually 143 different triggers available right now. And I can sort of browse through the list. You can see there's quite a lot of them. And of course I can narrow it down. If I wanted to do, you can see Twitter is right here, but let's say it wasn't, I could just start typing and it'll filter the list for me. Yeah. So I think the most common demo that people do with Flow is using Twitter. So what I'll do here is I'm going to quickly I'll use Twitter as my trigger, and all I have to do is specify the text in Twitter that I want to search. I'm going to search for hashtag #SandSpudge. And if those of you that are on your phones and can tweet real quick, not yet, let me get it set up. But when I get it set up, we'll do it. So what I'm going to do right here is do hashtag #SandSpudge, and I'll add a new step. And you can see that under the add a step, I can choose an action, a condition, or more. And under more, we could do an apply to each, add a scope. A scope is just a way of grouping related actions together visually. You can collapse it, collapse a group of actions so it doesn't take up as much space on your screen. A switch is kind of like a condition, but it's got multiple branches. I'm just going to add an action though, and I can browse. We have 222 actions, it looks like. It's big enough for everybody to see, by the way. But I'll just type in SharePoint. And select SharePoint. Now I can browse the list of actions that are related to SharePoint. And we're going to just create an item. And let me put it here. It's really difficult because on my screen text is minuscule. Yeah, I can zoom in on the browser, but it doesn't expand the address. Okay. So I've got a site that I've already created previously that I've used for a lot of my Flow demos. And you'll notice I have a list here called Feeds. And it's got a lot of data in it from before, from other demos that I've done. And we'll just use the same list again right now. So let's go back here. I'm going to just be out on this one. Oh no, let's see. All right. It is it's in a site collection that's just called TMC, my initials, and then I've got like a flow test afterwards. So you don't know how to publish it here. The first thing I have to do when I use any SharePoint action is specify the URL for the site, which is, that's my URL. And after I enter the URL, it'll now prompt me to enter a list name. But I don't have to type it out. It'll give the list of all the lists in that particular site. So I'm going to just select my tweet list. I've never had that happen. But have you seen that? Yeah, I know the UI, like back in the preview days last year, the UI was more flaky. And I definitely had issues where it didn't refresh right away. But I would say in the last couple months, I haven't seen that happen. And did it work if you typed in the custom value? Did that work?
Yeah.
All right. So notice now that I selected this list, it now is aware of what columns that list has. Okay, so now what I can do is map values from my trigger populate this column. So for example, if I click here on trigger, notice what happened. It displays the input parameters from my trigger. So I think I'm going to select for the title, I'm just going to put, all I do is click on that. I could put multiple items, like I could put protect-username if I wanted to. So I can combine values into a particular value, but I'm not going to do that. Instead, I'm going to come down to the tweeted by column, and I'm going to put in, tweeted by. Notice here, when I select RT count, that's a numeric column in SharePoint. So Flow is smart enough to go, that's a numeric column. I don't want you putting text values in there. And it's aware that the data types from the trigger, it knows that retweet count is also numeric. It knows that this column is numeric. So instead of allowing me to select text, which wouldn't be compatible with that column, it prevents me from doing it. Put in description here. I think this tweet is the original tweet. I think that's, we'll duplicate that. And then there's location, which is, there we go, location. I think there's, maybe there's, okay. All right, okay, well, I thought there might have been some additional parameters here for like a favorite count, but that's not available here. So anyway, you see what I'm doing is I'm taking the data from the trigger, I'm connecting it to the right columns in my list, and at this point we're probably ready to save this. So I'm going to give this a name. What is it? All right, I'm going to give this a name. We'll call this Capture Stands Bug Tweets. Create, and we'll click Create Flow. Okay, so this is now done. And anybody that has Twitter on their phone, if you can just put something that says #SansBug in it. All right. And we'll come to our list here. It might take a few minutes. This list, I believe, is sorted by descending order. Yeah. So if I refresh this, we'll hopefully see our recent tweet. Okay, not yet. Again, it does take a couple minutes sometimes to process. But while we're waiting on that, we'll just come back to here. I'm gonna go back to manage my tweets. And if I wanted to edit a flow, I can click right here and it'll just open it up in the editor again. But if I click on this information icon, it'll show me the actual runs of that flow. Oh, failed, all right. So apparently I made a mistake, so let's take a look at what happened. Take a look at that. Yeah. Oh, it's in a apply each. I don't know how that. Okay. So let's move this out of there. I don't even know how that applied to each. In there. I might have clicked on that by mistake. That was not supposed to be in a loop. So let's just delete this. I did not notice I created that. Yeah, that was not, or each was not supposed to be there. So let's update this again. And if you guys could repeat that, at least a couple of you. Just resend the tweet. And else here I can filter. I mean, right now we only have 2 executions of it, but we can look for ones where it just checked and nothing happened. Like here where it skipped because it didn't find any tweets yet. Or I can look for successful runs, none that are successful yet. We can just see failed runs, or we can just say, let's show me everything. Okay, so a couple succeeded, good. Let's go back over to here and we'll refresh this. And here we go. Here's the tweets that we just got in the last couple minutes here. So I can see the text, who it came from, it was Sal. There's the description of his user account. So it captured his location, the date it happened. That's a kind of hello world equivalent for Flow. Every Flow demo I've seen starts off that way. Let's get into something a little bit more interesting. But my favorite demo is one where actually a combination of a couple of things. This provision new customer, and it also integrates with this creating a new account in Salesforce, which is actually integrating with text. So this, what happens here, and let me go back to my slide for a sec. So the idea here is I'm going to log into this dynamic CRM. I'm going to enter a new account in dynamic CRM. And all I'm going to do is I need to populate the name of the account, the ticker symbol, and the web. Those are the only attributes I care about. That's going to trigger my flow. the use case here is that when we add a new account or an opportunity for a salesperson in CRM, or this could be Salesforce or some other CRM type system, what I want to do is provision some content in SharePoint. Maybe we have a standard sales contract that we want our salesperson to use, and maybe there's a standard quote spreadsheet or something, and we want to make sure that our sales reps aren't just making that stuff up on the fly, that we're using a standardized template. So Flow is going to, everyone's going to send an email notification for approval. I have to approve it, and then assuming I approve it, it's going to create a new folder in the SharePoint library. It's going to iterate through a bunch of templates in a folder and make a copy of those and rename them in another folder for this new customer. And then it would send an email to the sales rep, letting them know that their content is available. Actually, I don't think the email part is in the demo, but logically, it might send an email to the sales rep saying, hey, here's the materials for your new account. Please edit these files, using our templates. And then what it actually does is it adds another record into another list in that same site. I have a different flow that monitors that list, and this flow triggers when that list is populated. So the first flow is creating a list item that causes the second flow to trigger, and that flow actually calls into Nintex, and in Nintex we're saving that data into Salesforce. And that one was that was just more to show the interaction between a lot of different systems. It wasn't necessarily a real world use case, but that's how this demo works. So we'll what I'll do first is I'll just trigger it because it takes a couple minutes to process, and I'll step through how we actually created that flow. So I have Dynamics CRM open to one of these tabs. Here we go. Right. I'm going to log into my Dynamics CRM. Anybody here using Dynamics CRM? I know a few of you are using Salesforce. Anybody uses Dynamics? You see Sal within your customers. You guys actually see a lot of Dynamics CRM. Yeah. It is. It's the same type of product. Right. I think it's a lot more. The sale, I'm not I'm a former developer myself, but I was always a guy that did the back end development and the database stuff. I was never good at user interfaces. And I was looking at Salesforce it looks like something I would design, where Dynamics CRM looks like something like a professional UI designer would do. But Salesforce is more popular right now for whatever reason. All right, so go to sales, I'm gonna go to my accounts. And okay, I'm gonna add an account here. I have a company name I could use for my demo. EP Plus. All right. I'm gonna put you on our mailing list. This is a demo tenant. So I'm just going to enter three things: the account name, the website, epplus.com. All right, and you got a couple of created. Plus, all right. Which now we can just make something up. What do I do here? Okay, and I'm just going to click save. So this is now going to trigger my flow that's called provision new customers. So while it's firing off in the background, let's jump back into flow and we'll take a look at that one. So you can see, this is what that flow looks like. This one's a little bit more involved than the previous ones. We can see we have, slow to respond here. Okay, so that I just got an approval request. So one of the things that this flow does is send me an approval, which is, I only put that in there just to sort of show what the approval looks like. Okay. So we can see how I have this scope, and all that's doing is sending this approval email. And so if I go to my email, wow, you know what? Let's put this in the browser because that is too small. Can I zoom in on that? All right, yeah, I guess we can zoom in on this. Here's the email that Flo just sent me. And I haven't done a lot of formatting of this. It's just kind of very basic. I took the URL of the site created by and a couple of the metadata values out of, actually what this is saying is it's going to provision a folder in my SharePoint site. It's telling me the location of where it's going to do that. You see it gives me two buttons, approve and reject. So I'll approve that. And that will let the flow continue down its way. Well, let's take a look. That's exactly what we're getting to right here. But here you can see we have the send approval email. If I click on that, you can see how I configured the subject line. I just get approval request for provision, and then this is an attribute that came out of the trigger, right? So because I created an account in CRM, it passes all of the attributes of that account, and I can use whichever ones that we want. For the sake of this demo, I know I'm only populating the name, the ticker symbol on the website, so I wouldn't want to use anything else. But I could add other parameters in here. And then notice here I have the user options, approve and reject. So those are the two buttons we get, right? I could add additional options by just adding them right here in the comma separated list. And then here's the body of the message. So you can see it doesn't give me a really great way to format, like a really nicely formatted, branded email. That would be kind of difficult to achieve with this. So I was having some issues getting it to route the text, and you can see I was kind of messing around with little HTML PR tags, which is like a line feed in HTML. So that part, like if you're trying to do like a really nicely formatted message, this is difficult to do that with right now. But I could, specify the importance level of it. I could even add attachments if I wanted. But that's that. Now to your question, notice that underneath it I have a condition. And in here, the condition is going to compare the first value, which is the selected option. That is whatever of those choices the user clicked on, that's what's going to get passed over to my flow. And so now the condition is going to simply evaluate, and I can choose, okay, is it equal to, or does it contain, or greater than, less than. So I can choose a lot of different comparisons to do. In this case, it's just, I want to say, is it equal to approve? And if yes, it'll do this. Now, because I've zoomed out on this, it's stacking these things vertically. If I zoom out, it's a responsive design. You see how normally it's displayed yes and no side by side. Right? When I zoom out, it responds and it stacks it vertically. You can see here, if I just click no, nothing happens. So click the vote at that point. If I click yes, notice how here I have basically everything else is comprised in this section, but this is what we call a scope. It's collapsed right now. It doesn't take up too much space, but if I click on it, it'll expand, and now I have quite a bit more functionality going on here. For starters, I have this list folder, and this is where we can, this is a SharePoint action that allows me to point at a folder in a library and iterate through whatever files are in that folder. So I'm pointing at this site, and this is the library and the folder that I want to look at. And if we look over here, I think it's that one. Notice I have this library here, documents, which is really our shared documents library. And notice I have a folder here called templates, right? Which just has these three generic templates in it. So when I hit that flow, it's going to iterate through those three items in that template. If I added a new template or I changed it, it'll just iterate through whatever's in there. And notice how now we have this apply to each. because list folder returns an array, so apply to each automatically comes here. And first thing we're going to do is get the body from the previous step. This is the body of the file that we're iterating on. We have this other action called get file content. We pass it the ID. Because it's iterating through each file, this is getting me the ID of that file. I'm using the ID of that file to get the content of that file. And then I'm using this other action called create new file. This action is actually called create new file, but I renamed it to be called create new file from template. So when you add an action, it gives you the generic name like create new file, but then I can rename it clicking here to make it more user-friendly to me. So I know exactly what it's referring to. And all I'm saying is create a new file, and I'm putting it into a different library. Right? Instead of the shared documents library, I'm putting it into a library called client docs. And then I'm specifying a slash, and I'm using the account name to create a folder. And then I'm going to specify a file name, which is going to be the name of the account dash the original name of that file. And then I'm passing in the file content, and that will actually create a file. It's really just creating a copy from my template and putting it in there, but with a different name and in a different location. And then the last thing we're doing is simply using a create item action to take the account name, the ticker symbol on the website, and putting it into this other SharePoint list, which is right here called new accounts. And so this is just a normal SharePoint list. For those of you that are new to SharePoint, SharePoint supports document libraries, but it also supports just plain lists, which is rows of data, and you can define whatever columns you want to store. So think of it as like a web-based spreadsheet in a sense. But it's powerful that user one to be editing one row, another user to be editing a different row at the same time. And you can create custom forms on top of it and stuff like that. Initially, I created this list. I was building a different flow. Let me just go over here. I'm going to leave that open. I was testing another flow that was using that list as a trigger. And this flow had nothing to do with the first flow. And I just, at the end, I decided to kind of connect them. What I was doing here was a trigger that responded to that list when an item was created. And what I was really doing was I had created my own custom action using Nintex. I just wanted a simple way to test that action. So I had wired that up to, I had wired up this flow to that list. And then I created this custom action in flow that connects to Nintex. And I was just populating the account name as the title, the ticker symbol of the website. And this is calling a Nintex workflow. And then in Nintex, that connects into Salesforce and it writes it into Salesforce. So there's two unrelated demos. And then at the last minute, I said, you know what? Why don't I just take the data from this one, save it into this same list, so I could fire off the second flow automatically. And that's what's happened here. So at the end of that first flow, it should have created this item, it should have fired this off, and we can log into my Salesforce environment and verify that it all works. So let's come back into our site. So if we go to client docs, you should see a new folder for E+, which is right here. So it just got created 8 minutes ago. And it has the files that were copied from my templates. And then if we look over here under new accounts, we should see E+ as well, which we do. There's a ticker symbol on the website. And then if we go to my Salesforce, we go to accounts. There's E+ at the top. With the name, the ticker symbol, and the website. And so this got here again because we created that record in the new account list. It triggered the flow, and the flow actually triggered through a web-based call to this Nintex workflow product, and that's where it created Salesforce. I'm not going to get into that part, but the point is just really to show how we can create. There's a couple of buzzwords that are out there. One is called workflow as a service, The idea is that instead of building these big monolithic workflows where we have a single workflow that does a bazillion things, you construct your workflows as small services and you expose APIs and you let workflow 1 talk to workflow 2 that can talk to workflow 2. And now you can create a very modular system that's really easy to reuse individual components. Or if I create everything in one workflow and this little part in the middle is really reusable, but it's combined with all this other stuff, I can't actually reuse that stuff. So this is where we're showing how to create these services and exposing them as workflows. And then you can wire them up however you want to. So that's pretty much all I had, but I'm definitely open for questions or other things. So in this particular case, Nintex did, but Flow certainly could have done that. I just happened to have wanted to test calling a whole nother workflow system from Flow. Really, what I was really trying to do is just show how I could create a custom action in Flow. And I didn't really want to sit there and write the code, but because Nintex and Flow use the same open API standard, it's really easy for them to talk to each other. And so I just wrapped my Nintex workflow as an action inside of Flow. I don't know if we have enough time to cover that part of it, but it's definitely supported. But how many folks here do JavaScript or jQuery, JSON development? So, that's an open API, and the Swagger standard is targeted for you guys. So if you have systems that you want to expose as services, we can look at open API or Swagger, look it up, and it tells you how to define a Swagger file, and then you can import that into Flow to create your own custom actions, in addition to the hundreds and hundreds that it provides by Microsoft. I did. The only difference is I didn't write my own code because I didn't have time, and because Nintex created the Swagger file that Flow needed, it was just a super easy way for me to kind of test out the ability to import my own actions. No, I think workflow as a service, Microsoft came up with that with .NET 4.0. They started combining WCF and Windows Workflow Foundation. And they basically said, if you want to build workflows, you now do it in WCF, right? And you can build a workflow, instead of building a WCF service, you can build it as a workflow and expose it through WCF, right? So it's a concept that's been around for a while. I don't know if Microsoft actually invented it, but they definitely popularized it back in the .NET 4.0 release days, which was, 2012 maybe? I'm not even sure. And so this is just an evolution of that. So that's everything I have for to present. But any questions, comments? Yeah, good question. I'm not sure if that's in there. We can find out that it might be. I know there is some queuing stuff. I haven't played with it at all though yet. Let's just take a look. If I wanted to create a new one, let's see if there's any triggers for it first. So there's Azure queues and Service Bus, but it doesn't show MSMQ. Let's go into, I go to add an action, so I can write a message to yeah, so Azure queues, but not MSMQ. Yeah, it doesn't seem to be in there. Let's see if we can. Yeah. Is there any special spelling for that? I haven't looked at that in a while. Q, right? Yeah. So I searched by Q and MSMQ, and the only thing it showed was Azure queues. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Right. Yeah, I don't know if, it's been, I've worked with MSMQ years and years ago. I don't know if it's got the same kind of the specifications for, working with things like OpenAPI to connect to it. So, but it's probably something that's doable. It's just not as high priority. I mean, they're focusing on Azure and other cloud services as a priority. So that's why you see Azure queues in there. You might look at it as, I bet you there's a way for using MSMQ to integrate it with Azure queues, maybe. And maybe that would be a good. Okay. Uh-huh. Right. So if I go, you're talking about you want to use a calendar as a trigger, or do you want to write to a calendar? You want to sync from the calendar? So you want to be able to write an item to a calendar in SharePoint? Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Gotcha. Okay. Let's see. So Google Calendar, Office, and it's been. What's the source of the calendar? But what is Outlook connected to? Office 365 calendar? Okay. Let's see if I split it. Right. Gotcha. You're trying to just. Gotcha. Gotcha. And when you say an Outlook calendar, you really mean an Office 365 calendar. Right, okay. So I know of an intranet solution called Powell 365 that takes a lot of Office 365 components. They're not inside of SharePoint itself, but it builds an intranet in SharePoint that allows you to surface all of those things without a lot of without any custom development. So it might work with the calendar. If it's really just a UI thing that you're trying to do, not really a synchronization. It sounds like you're trying to do UI first and synchronization was your workaround. Well, look at here. So here we have Office 365 Outlook. When an event is modified, when an event is created. I haven't tried this, but it looks like we can have a trigger that says when an event is created or modified. Right. It looks like this is. Gotcha. Yeah, that's the thing. Is like querying list data by with metadata is challenging in Flow. That's one of the things that that's one of the updates that they just announced yesterday, and I haven't tried it yet. But now they've added filtering that you can use OData style query syntax to filter when you get items, where before you couldn't. So that might be supported as of yesterday. And I just got a note. So if you do, where am I going? Right. So look, so if you go get item here, I think you might be able to do it now. Get item. So here, the get item takes a list name and then an ID. So, well, if you don't have the ID, how do you get the item? So So supposedly, I don't. There's supposed to be an advanced options. That's not there, so maybe it's not this section. Let me from a forum. Let me just go to the Flow forum. Yeah, maybe that's something we can take offline as well. Yeah, but there was. I gotta dig up that message. I barely even read the email. I just did busy with other things, but there was something about that supported. But I'll find it and I'll let you know the details. Yeah. Any other questions? All right. Well, thanks everybody for your time today. We will be meeting again next month. It's May 11th on a Thursday at this same location on the Office 365 security hardening with Anton, who's a Microsoft, I forgot his title, one of Salesforce. So that's everything. Thanks.